Nectar of the Gods. Hello and welcome to another video. My name is Heather, and as always I am reading with a vengeance, and as always I hope you are as well. If this isn't your first time here, welcome back. If this is your first time here, welcome to my channel. I've had quite a few new subscribers in the past couple of weeks, and that is in no small part to some fellow booktubers who have given me a shout out. Krista from Books and Jams, Gloria from Gloria Z. Thompson, Alice from Alice and the Giant Bookshelf, Nikki from Red Dot Reads, and of course Gemma from Gemma Books. All super lovely ladies. I'm sure you have all watched their channel, but just in case, I'll link their channels down below. They're wonderful and I enjoy watching them, and I am so grateful for the shout outs. It is such, I can't even describe it, because I started this channel for purely, full disclosure, purely selfish reasons. I, of course, love books, and I love talking about books almost as much as I love reading them. So when you do something that you love and then as a byproduct it turns into something that other people enjoy, it's just such a wonderful feeling. So ladies, thank you so much for that. Today I'm going to be talking about the books that I've read so far in April. So this is, of course, a mid-month wrap up for April. I did a TBR video about a week ago, I think, because I know it was late. And I had this lovely stack of books that I had high ambitions to read, as you see right here. Do you know how many of these books that I've read so far? Zero, zip, zilch, nada, nil. Did I already say nil? Goose egg. Epic fail. But I have read, I believe, 8 books so far. Let me check. Yes, 8 that I have to talk about today. I know you all love the stats, but I like to save the stats for the second part of my wrap up, my full month wrap up at the end of the month. So I'm gonna move right on into the books. So the first book that I read this month was All Systems Red by Martha Wells. This is a first in a series. I can't remember who I heard about it from, but as I've said in previous videos, I am getting further and further and deeper into sci-fi, and I'm really enjoying it. And this particular series, which is called the Murderbot series, sounded appealing to me. I checked it out from the library, so I don't have the physical copy here, but I did read the physical copy and I did enjoy it. The main character, the Murderbot, if you will, has this snarky, sarcastic personality, and I absolutely love it. What's it about? So since I'm fairly new to sci-fi, I'm still kind of getting a grasp of the jargon and the vernacular in explaining something. So I know it takes place in outer space, and there are these groups of people who are sent on missions for the company to do, say, service or surface tests on other planets. Because the company, of course, wants to have as many planets for resources as possible. And they send these groups of people to these planets for the test. And the company sends a chaperone, which is a droid, and they are self-aware. The main character in this book, he refers to himself as a murderbot, but never out loud. He's disdainful of humans. He's hacked into his own governor module, if you will. I guess the module inside of him that makes him do the things that he is supposed to do. So he's more self-aware. He's more able to make his own decisions. Sorry, Jake is saying hi. So for the most part, so that he is not discovered by the humans, that he has hacked into his governor module, he does what he's supposed to do. He does his job, but most of the time he wants to be left alone. He's got kind of his own little Netflix in his own head. So all he wants to do is kind of stay in his own cubicle and binge watch his favorite shows. But then this particular book, the storyline follows the group that he is shadowing. They discover that a neighboring mission has gone dark. So they decide to make it their mission to go and see what has happened. So I hope all of that makes sense. Like I said, I'm really new to the sci-fi genre, so I'm not really well versed in explaining what's going on, but I did enjoy it. There was, to be fair, a lot of sci-fi jargon in this particular story that kind of went over my head a little bit, but it was enjoyable because the main character, the murder bot himself, he's pretty funny. I enjoy that snarky, sarcastic way that he has about himself and the things he says about humans, and just his inner commentary is pretty entertaining. So I will read the second one. I let my husband read it and he enjoyed it too. So, and he enjoyed it even more. He's been reading sci-fi longer than I have, so he was able to grasp a lot of the jargon better than I could. So he's been asking me every time I go to the library, was the second one there? And they have number 3, number 4, 5, and 6, which I believe is the newest one, available at the library, but number 2's been out for weeks. So anyways, I will continue with this series. I am enjoying it. I gave this one 3.75 stars. The next book I read this month was The Little Book of Hygge, The Danish Way to Live Well by Meik Wiking. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly. My apologies if I haven't. I checked this one out from the library as well, so I don't have the physical copy. And of course, this is a nonfiction on basically how to instill the lifestyle of Hygge into your life. And I found it quaint and cute, and lots of what I felt to be obvious choices to make in your life if you want to apply Hygge to your lifestyle. If you don't know, Hygge is the Danish way of finding comfort and pleasure and warmth and hominess in just all the little everyday things in your life, whether it be a cozy atmosphere in your home or anywhere else you go, or just the comfort of surrounding yourself with friends. And while there's lots of good information in the book, it's repetitive. It didn't need to be as long. Essentially, he encourages you to have comfortable items in your home: pillows, warm socks, candles, soft lighting, specifically provided by candles, and things of that nature. There's also a couple of recipes that he includes in the book. Not ones as a vegetarian that I could enjoy really, but I think pork is a really big staple of Danish cuisine. So no judgment or anything like that, but I couldn't really partake in the recipes. But he also had some anecdotes that I found entertaining and funny that he applied to most of the recommendations he had for the Hygge lifestyle. I felt like the book would have improved if it had really cozy photographs. I follow the Hygge hashtag on Instagram, and I absolutely love what comes up on my feed. Really warm, cozy corners of somebody's house, or a cafe that they found that has that Hygge feeling. Sometimes people will show the food that they make that just, you feel like you just want to dive right in and it will feel cozy and comfy. So I felt this book would have been improved with photographs like that, but it was mostly illustrations. But I gave this one 3 stars. The next 2 books that I read, numbers 3 and 4 for April, were the continuation of the manga series that I've referred to before, and that is The Way of the House Husband by Kousuke Oono. Again, my apologies for pronunciation. This is a series that I discovered from Tia and her channel, Tia and All the Books. I'll link her channel down below. This, like I said, this is a manga series that I have mentioned before, and I am going to read the rest of the series. They're just super cute and super entertaining and funny. And it follows, I don't even remember the main character's name. He's referred to as the Immortal Dragon. He was a leader in the Yakuza gang in Japan. And he has left the Yakuza, and he is now married, and he is married to a woman who works for a living, and she is the main breadwinner. So he is at home being, of course, the house husband, doing the cooking, the cleaning, the sewing, the shopping, everything. And he goes to yoga classes. He takes photographs for his Instagram of the food that he prepares. And in his travels out in town, when he's doing the shopping, he'll run across rival gangs and the like, and it basically follows what happens, and it is super entertaining. It's black and white manga, so it's rather simply illustrated, and you know, I changed my mind. It's not, I wouldn't say simply illustrated. It's really lovely illustrations. Sometimes there's action sequences and you can actually see the movement on the page, which is super fun. But I would really like it if it was in color, but maybe I'm just too bougie for that. But I am enjoying it. And as I said, I read volumes 2 and 3 this month, and I will be getting volumes 4 and 5 at probably the next trip to the library. I gave both these volumes 3 stars. The next book I read in April was Sorrow and Bliss by Meg Mason. I checked this one out from the library, so I don't have a physical copy, but I did read the physical book, and I read this because it is on the long list for the Women's Prize for Fiction. I am slowly making my way through the long list, not in its entirety, but the ones that I can get my hands on. Sorrow and Bliss. So this follows Martha, and essentially this is a book about mental health. She is dealing with depression, probably some bipolar disorder, and you are following through her life as she is, how she met her husband, how she fell in love with her husband and got married, because he started off as a close friend of the family, and how her depression affects her marriage and affects him individually, how her depression affects her relationship with her mother and her sister, where her depression kind of stems from, which I won't get too much into. It's a little bit of a spoiler. There's an awful lot of sorrow and very, very short on the bliss, and I think that's the point. So be mindful going into this book. There's kind of a heaviness of depression that kind of weighs down on you as you're following Martha through her journey. I will say one of the interesting things that the author does in this book is when she is finally diagnosed, she doesn't say it in the book. It is not typed out in the book. When the doctor says, oh, you are dealing with this, there's a blank in the book. And I read somewhere that the author obviously does that on purpose because she didn't want it to be a label that you put on somebody. She didn't want it to be a medical label that is applied to somebody who's dealing with these struggles. She wanted the focus to be on the struggle themselves and how it affects how you see yourself as a person and how you relate to other people. And I thought that was really important. I think this is a really important book for anybody to have an understanding when you come across people just in everyday life. You know, sometimes it's not just a bad day. I did appreciate the book for that. And while the ending I wouldn't say is a feel-good ending, there is some level of hope there that I appreciated in this book. I gave this book 3 stars. Next book I read in April is probably going to be easily in my top 10 for the year, and that is The Heart's Invisible Furies by John Boyne. I listened to this book. It's been on my TBR for a while because I read The Boy in the Striped Pajamas, and I did enjoy that. And then I read A Ladder to the Sky. I also enjoyed that. So John Boyne's been on my radar. And so I added this to my TBR, and it's been one of those books. It's a longer one, and the synopsis doesn't grab you. But then I watched Jack over at Jack and the Book Stack, and she did a vlog on this book and she raved about it. And it just kind of, you know, sometimes you listen to somebody talk about a book and it just gives you the extra urge that you need. And it just, at the same time, it was available on my Libby app and I listened to it and oh my God. So I'm not going to go too deeply into it because I did do a video. I have a little series called Fiction Depiction where I review single books, and I try to keep those videos nice and short where I'm just talking about one particular book. And so I did one of those for Heart's Invisible Furies, and I'll try to link it up here. Essentially, it is a book that spans several decades following one particular character, Cyril Avery. And he is an Irishman, born in Ireland, raised in Ireland, and then as an adult, he moves to Amsterdam, and then he moves to New York, and it follows his life and his relationships with his adoptive parents and his relationship with his best friend and other friends. He's dealing with being Irish, being a gay man in Ireland through the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s, and all the struggles that follow with that. And that's all I'll say about it here. I absolutely recommend it. If you are one to listen to audiobooks, this was probably one of the best audiobooks I've ever listened to. The narrator, Stephen Hogan, did a phenomenal job narrating this book, and all the stars, 5 stars, probably one of my all-time favorite books. Absolutely loved it. Can't wait to read more of John Boyne's stuff. The next book I listened to was Tangerine by Christine Mangan, and I listened to this book as well, and this book was on my TBR for a super long time. I don't remember how I heard about it, and it was one of those books that, unfortunately, it's super lowly rated on Goodreads, and so I was kind of hesitant to pick it up. And it was one of those books that each time I would go into my TBR on Goodreads to try to kind of clean it up, take out books that have been on there for too long that don't necessarily interest me anymore, I would come to this one and I'd reread the synopsis and I'd be like, no, I really do want to read this. And so I happened to find it on my Libby app. It was available. And so I listened to it and it was a pleasant surprise. You know, I didn't love it, but it absolutely did keep me entertained. It takes place, I believe, in the 1950s in Tangier, Morocco. And that's where most of the book takes place. There's dual timelines here and there's dual perspectives. And it follows Lucy, who is an American young woman, and it follows Alice, a British woman. They meet when they are going to college in, I can't remember if it's Vermont or New Hampshire, one of the New England states. They become really good friends. They're roommates in college. And then kind of some strange things start to happen. There's a little bit of an obsessive relationship there. And you wonder if either Alice is mentally unstable or if you wonder if Lucy is obsessing over Alice. And then an accident happens and a tragedy occurs and Alice leaves the States and goes home to the UK with her aunt, and she ends up getting married and moving to Morocco. So a year later goes by and she's living in Morocco with her husband, a seemingly okay life. And then all of a sudden Lucy shows up on her doorstep and Alice doesn't quite know what to make of it. And that's when she starts to kind of reminisce of what happened back in the States. And then strange things start to happen there once Lucy shows up and insinuates herself in Alice's life. And there were some moments where I was feeling some emotions. There was some gaslighting going on that just made me feel really uncomfortable, but in a delicious way when you're reading a story. So I was pleasantly surprised with this one. And yeah, I would recommend it. I don't know why it hasn't gotten more kind of talk in the book world that we are all a part of. So yeah, I gave this one 3.5 stars. And finally, the last book I have finished so far for April is The Great Circle by Maggie Shipstead. This is a library book. I will be returning it today. This is the main reason I have not been able to get to more of the books on the TBR that I created for myself. It's a chunker. And not only does it have many pages, it has very large pages and very tiny print. So it took me a minute to get through this. I want to say this took me almost 2 weeks, maybe 10 days. Pick this up because it is on the long list for the Women's Prize for Fiction. What to say about Great Circle? So I went into this and at first, probably the first 30 pages, I was like, what's going on? I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to read this. And also that coupled with the idea of I was a little intimidated by how big this book is. It's almost 600 pages. And so it took a minute to get into, but then once the story starts to really get going and you get invested in the characters, I was loving it. I was probably a third of the way through this book thinking that this was going to be a 5-star, probably one of my favorites. You know, it has dual timelines, it has dual perspective, takes place over many years. It just had those criteria that I really enjoy in a book, and I really thought this was going to be a favorite of mine. So I did like this book. What's it about, Heather? So this follows mainly Marion, who was born right before the First World War, so I believe 1914. She has a twin brother, Jamie, and it kind of follows their lives, but mostly Marian's. And she, at a very early age, discovers that she wants to be a pilot. And of course, back in those days, it's almost unheard of. And she wants to learn as much as she can about planes. I believe when she's a teenager, some what are they called? Barnstormers comes to her town, and she's just infatuated. And then she meets somebody, a man who has a questionable background, who becomes infatuated with Marian, but he has resources. So they kind of use each other. Marian kind of uses the resources that I believe his name is Barclay has for her in order to get flying lessons. And she learns how to fly, and essentially just follows her life as a pilot and her relationships. The dual timeline follows Hadley, who is an actress in present day, and she has been cast in the role to play Marian in the movie. I felt like that second timeline was unnecessary. I really didn't care about Hadley. I see where there's a connection, but I feel like there would have been a better way to make that connection from present day back to Marian. Oh, a little important plot note. So Marian, after she becomes a pilot and as an adult, obviously, she wants to circumnavigate the earth in a plane. She makes the attempt and things go wrong and she goes missing. And so that's how she kind of becomes notorious in the world. And that's how years later, a book is written by her, or a book is written about her, and then consequently a movie is being made. So anyways, I didn't really care about Hadley's storyline. I felt like there could have been another way to make that connection to Marian. I loved reading about Marian. I loved reading about her brother, Jamie, and how they were raised in this small town with their uncle. I felt there was a lot of talk about flying and airplanes. I felt like that was a little bit overwritten. I felt like there was some kind of environment description overwriting towards the end when she's actually on her fated flight. I felt like that was a little bit too long. I started to get a little bit bored. So I felt like if this book were about 100 pages shorter, maybe even 150 pages shorter, this could have been a 5-star book for me. I really loved the story. I really loved the premise, but I just felt it was a little bit too long. I did, however, give it 4 stars. So I really, really enjoyed it. I don't want to discourage anybody from reading it because obviously there are people out there who love the descriptions and really love to immerse themselves in the topics. You know, for example, flights and planes in this book. But for me, I just thought it was a little bit too much. So anyways, 4 stars for this one. So that's what I've read so far. What am I reading now? I am making my way through The Farm by Joanne Ramos. I've only just started it. It's pretty interesting. This basically talks about the farm is referring to this place that women go to be surrogate mothers, to basically house babies for rich women who can't have babies of their own or for whatever reason don't want to have them on their own. And the women who are hosts are at this farm and their lives are not their own. So far, so good. I'm enjoying that. I'm listening to a book called The Serpent King, and I can't remember the author's name off the top of my head. I'll pop it up here, and I'm really enjoying that as well. As you see, I have several books that I want to get through for this month, and I'm not quite sure what I'll read next. But so far, my favorite of the month, obviously, is The Heart's Invisible Furies. It probably will be my favorite of the month, but who knows what's in store for the rest of the month, so we'll see. What are you reading so far? Do you have a favorite of the month so far? I would love to hear about it. Have you read any of these? What do you think? If you've not read any of these, have you read other books by the authors of some of these books? And do you have recommendations where I should go from there? Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. If you've made it this far, I'd really appreciate if you boop the like button and subscribe to my channel, especially if you want to know when I upload another video. And I will see you next time. Bye-bye.